book. Speaking of extraordinary, I had lunch with an extraordinary gentleman today. He's hosting NewsNight tonight. Solo Anderson Cooper is off again. He's Aaron Brown, the man of renown. Have a great weekend. You're off next week. Have a great week off. Have a good time and,
Thank you.
Come in under par.
Thank you. I hope I am. I expect it to be an interesting week. Thank you very much. Good evening again, everyone. It began with 16 words uttered by the president about Iraq and nuclear weapons. Only 16 words in a very long speech. It became a battle and a scandal, and now perhaps a crime.
Vice President Cheney's chief of staff is indicted. After 2 years of secretive digging, the special prosecutor sent shockwaves through the Bush White House.
Special counsel Fitzgerald's investigation and ongoing legal proceedings are serious.
Suzanne Malveaux tonight on Just How Serious. Louis Scooter Libby, described as second only to Karl Rove in the White House inner circle, resigned immediately and could face 30 years in prison. Gary Tuchman gets more on the man behind the controversy. President Bush's deputy chief of staff, Karl Rove, is off the hook. Or is he?
I will not end the investigation until I can look anyone in the eye and tell them that we have carried out our responsibility sufficiently.
John King looks at the future of the president's top advisor. And if Libby lied, there's this question: why? David Ensor on the indictments and how the U.S. justified war with Saddam. This is Newsnight with Anderson Cooper and Aaron Brown. Live from the CNN Broadcast Center in New York, here's Aaron Brown.
Good evening again. As Larry said, Anderson's off tonight. The story of how we got from uranium in Africa to a reporter in jail to a White House under siege is only half written tonight at best. There are many more chapters to come, many questions to be answered, not the least of which is why, if true, did a smart and incredibly savvy White House insider lie so obviously to investigators? And did he do it, if he did it, to protect his boss, the vice president? There is that and more. But also, there is also this. The plain and powerful words of a federal prosecutor with a reputation for playing it straight. Laws were broken, he said. Not technicalities, but laws. A full night on this tonight, a full house. CNN's Suzanne Malveaux at the White House, John King in Washington, David Ensor as well. And we begin with Ms. Malveaux. Suzanne.
The cloud that has been hanging over the Bush administration for nearly 2 years from the CIA leak investigation finally broke. Scooter Libby was a trusted member of Mr. Bush's most inner circle, but the 5-count indictment of Vice President Cheney's chief of staff is not the end of the probe.
I'm going to have a great Friday and a fantastic weekend. Hope you do too.
Karl Rove, the president's top political advisor, escaped indictment today, but his lawyer says he remains under investigation.
I will not end the investigation until I can look anyone in the eye and tell them that we have carried out our responsibility sufficiently.
A beleaguered Mr. Bush, departing for his Camp David retreat, tried to soften the blow.
While we're all saddened by today's news, we remain wholly focused on the many issues and opportunities facing this country. I got a job to do, and so do the people who work in the White House.
White House insiders say they are saddened by Libby's departure, but are relieved that Rove seemed to have been spared. Cheney, who stuck to his schedule of fundraising and rallying Georgia troops, said in a written statement he accepted his top lieutenant's resignation with deep regret. Scooter Libby is one of the most capable and talented individuals I have ever known. He has given many years of his life to public service and has served our nation tirelessly and with great distinction. In a statement of his own, Libby said, "I am confident that at the end of this process, I will be completely and totally exonerated."
I look forward to working with Congress on policies to keep this economy moving.
For President Bush, the strategy is to pivot towards his political agenda.
The question now is, can this White House get that famous first-term focus back? That is the real challenge.
Certainly, he needs some fresh blood. He needs to focus on big, bold things.
And Aaron, of course, one of those big things that he is talking about is picking his Supreme Court nominee. We are told by White House aides that could happen within days. Interesting enough, too, the strategy of the White House. We saw two memos that went out to White House staffers late in the day. One from Chief of Staff Andy Card saying, look, your job first and foremost is to serve the American people. The second one from White House counsel, which simply said that they should not reach out to Scooter Libby to discuss this case in any way, that it is still an ongoing investigation. Aaron?
Suzanne, thank you very much. Suzanne Malveaux at the White House. This all began, as I'm sure you know by now, with Ambassador Joe Wilson's trip to Niger back in February of 2002. He had nothing to say on camera when reached at his home today. He did release a statement through his lawyer. It is certainly not a day to celebrate, the statement reads. It goes on to say, when an indictment is delivered at the front door of the White House, the office of the president is defiled. No citizen can take pleasure from that. Almost from the beginning, this story has been a story and a puzzle with three dimensions: policy and politics and, of course, the law. Before we get any further into all three, here are the charges facing Mr. Libby tonight. 5 of them, all felonies. Count 1, obstruction of justice. It alleges Mr. Libby intentionally deceived the FBI and the grand jury about how he discovered Valerie Plame's status as a covert CIA officer. Count 2, false statement, lying to the FBI about whether Ms. Plame's status was well known, saying falsely the indictment alleges that NBC's Tim Russer told him that reporters were well aware of her identity. Count 3, false statement, lying to the FBI about the content of a conversation or conversations with Time Magazine's Matthew Cooper. Counts 4 and 5 relate to the last two, but are classified as perjury instead of simply making false statements, because the statements in question were made under oath to a federal grand jury. If convicted of all 5 counts, Mr. Libby could receive as much as 30 years in prison. How much of this is intended to loosen up his tongue, we simply do not know. Only the prosecutor does, and he's not saying. Patrick Fitzgerald met with the press this afternoon after 2 years of virtual silence. The questions must have seemed like opening a trip valve on Hoover Dam. As for his answers, he said very little about the inner workings of the investigation. Instead, what made the moment so remarkable was how plainly and how passionately he stated the case.
In trying to explain how the disclosure of a CIA agent's name evolved into an investigation that ensnared one of Washington's most powerful men, Patrick Fitzgerald put it in terms he felt most comfortable using, the language of baseball. What would the punishment be, he asked, if a pitcher intentionally threw at the head of a batter?
And then you make a decision as to whether this person should be banned from baseball, whether he should be suspended, whether you should do nothing at all and just say, hey, the person threw a bad pitch, get over it. In this case, it's a lot more serious than baseball. And the damage wasn't to one person, it wasn't to Valerie Wilson, it was done to all of us.
What he decided, he said, was this.
This is a very serious matter, and compromising national security information is a very serious matter. But the need to get to the bottom of what happened and whether national security was compromised by inadvertence, by recklessness, by maliciousness is extremely important.
And this is why.
And we need to know the truth. And anyone who would go into a grand jury and lie, and obstruct, and impede the investigation has committed a serious crime. But if what we allege in the indictment is true, then what is charged is a very, very serious crime that will vindicate the public interest in finding out what happened here.
And about forcing Judith Miller of the New York Times to jail.
No one wanted to have a dispute with the New York Times or anyone else. I would have wished nothing better that when the subpoenas were issued in August 2004, witnesses testified then, and we would have been here in October 2004 instead of October 2005. No one would have went to jail. I didn't have a vested interest in litigating it. I was not looking for a First Amendment showdown. We didn't bluff people, and what we decided to do was to make sure before we subpoenaed any reporter that we really needed that testimony.
Testimony, he said today, that was vital to his case.
At the end of the day, what appears is that Mr. Libby's story, that he was at the tail end of a chain of phone calls, passing on from one reporter what he heard from another, was not true. It was false. He was at the beginning of the chain of the phone calls, the first official to disclose this information outside the government to a reporter. and that he lied about it afterwards, under oath and repeatedly.
The allegations. If Mr. Fitzgerald has said little until now, the political establishment tonight is saying even less. Democratic lawmakers, by and large, are staying away from the microphones, by and large. So did a lot of Republicans. We did manage to get some reaction from Howard Dean, who is the chairman of the Democratic Party.
This is about what happens when you send people to foreign countries to fight without telling America the truth. This whole thing came about because the president wasn't truthful about why we went to Iraq.
As for the Republican side, we spoke at some length late this afternoon with John Sununu, the senator from New Hampshire. Why do you think people at the vice president's right hand, and whether this was criminal or not will be for a jury to decide, apparently engaged in this effort to, this is my word, certainly not yours, trash Ambassador Wilson?
Well, I think they felt that Ambassador Wilson was a partisan, and he certainly was, politically speaking, a partisan, that he may have had specific motives and goals in mind that was certainly counterbalanced by other evidence and other sources of intelligence gathering at the time, and they felt that there needed to be some sort of a balance out there. That doesn't justify the specific way that they approached it, but I think that was their concern at the time.
Do you think the vice president, given that an important aide to the vice president, often referred to as his right-hand man, a national security advisor, that the vice president needs to answer some questions here?
I don't have access to the material that was presented to the grand jury, and I think the defense teams and the prosecution are perfectly capable of deciding who needs to provide information in order to fairly try the case.
Respectfully, that's a very narrow legal answer to something, whether he needs to testify. And actually, if I may try the question again, I'm really interested in whether you believe there are questions the vice president needs to answer.
I think you need to be specific. What kind of a question? I think everyone knows what Vice President Cheney's position was on intelligence, on prosecuting the war. Certainly people understand and know his relationship to Scooter Libby, who served him very well, very capably. So like if there's a specific question that you want to pose to the vice president, that the media wants to pose to him, yes, you should ask those questions.
Well, let me try one then.
Sure.
Would you like to know if the vice president was in any way involved in discussions that led to the outing of Ms. Plame?
Oh, I think that question's been largely answered in the release of the notes of the conversation that he and Scooter Libby had, that apparently by what's been reported and what's been presented in the way of information from the grand jury. I guess this was one of the leaks prior to the indictment. There was a conversation between the two of them that did involve the fact that Joe Wilson's wife was an employee at the CIA.
My question was he involved in a decision to out her? Was he in any way involved in discussions? Did he say, yes, Scooter, that's a heck of an idea, or don't you dare do that, or what are you thinking? Don't you want to know that?
I think that's less important than whether the laws involving the disclosure were violated, and I think the prosecutor has pursued that question fairly effectively, and of course whether people have been forthcoming on the questions of perjury and cooperating with investigators. And on that issue, he's been very clear that he believes the law was violated, and that's why he's handed down the indictments.
Republican Senator John Sununu, you'd have a hard time knowing it. There is other news to report tonight, and we have more on the indictments coming up. But here are some of the other stories we're following at this moment. 45 police officers in New Orleans were fired today. They were let go for allegedly abandoning their posts either before or after Katrina hit. 15 other officers have resigned. In California, the mother of a teen accused of killing the wife of a prominent defense attorney has been released from jail. Esther Fielding was charged as an accessory to murder after the fact, but today police decided to drop the charges. Her son, who is 16, will be tried as an adult. Today, the United Nations Security Council condemned recent comments by Iran's president that Israel should be wiped off the map. The Israeli government says Iran's membership in the UN should be revoked because of the harsh words. And a fitting remembrance for Rosa Parks, the mother of the civil rights movement who died earlier in the week, will lie in honor Sunday and Monday in the Capitol Rotunda of the United States of America. Congress has authorized that right only 29 times in our country's history, and Ms. Parks is the first woman to ever receive the tribute. Back to the Libby indictment next. This is a story, as we said at the top, with many dimensions and complications. It is still by and large a mystery. Ahead tonight, we look more closely at the parts and the pieces and how they fit. And more on Scooter Libby himself, closer to the vice president perhaps than anyone but the president himself. And a closer look at where the case may go from here. We'll talk with official A. What next? A break first. This is NewsNight.
Leaving Saddam Hussein in possession of weapons of mass destruction for a few more months or years is not an option. Not in a post-September 11th world.
Life offers a simple formula for long-term success. Protect what really matters. Grow it with care. That's our approach to planning for your future at Prudential Retirement. For decades, we've used our strength to help people and organizations plan for retirement with intelligent retirement solutions designed to both grow wealth and protect it. Growth and protection. A strong and steady approach to retirement at Prudential Financial.
Who would ever think that the waste we generate would generate support for local events? The same people who lead the way in recycling nationwide and who conduct educational programs for our children. We're Waste Management. Working with local leaders, we're developing smart, earth-friendly landfill properties that serve the community in unexpected ways. From everyday collection to environmental protection. Think green. Think Waste Management.
WMD, a major argument for war in Iraq. Now insiders open up. CNN tonight, 11 Eastern.
I want to tell you about something that will change the way you think about the foods you eat. Foods like stir fry, chicken, and even baked goods. It's called Innova Oil. It's made from natural soy and canola. What makes Innova Oil special? Compared to other vegetable oils, less of it is stored in the body as fat. So Innova Oil can help you maintain a healthy lifestyle. Want to make a change for the better? You know what to do. Switch to Innova
Oil. In a world of artificial sweeteners, designer knockoffs, red dye number 2, number 3, number 4, it's nice to know you can still get your hands on the genuine article. The new 2006 Mercedes-Benz E350 with a more powerful 3.5-liter V6 engine. Why compromise your drive? Performance unlike any other.
Call is on now. CNN Monday night, 8 Eastern.
If there's a leak out of my administration, I want to know who it is. If the person has violated law, the person will be taken care of.
Innocent until proven guilty is a sacred American ideal. But if America's first impression of you comes from the mouth of a special prosecutor, you're probably already behind in the battle for public opinion. It may have been some comfort for Scooter Libby to hear the president and the vice president praise him for the work he's done for his country, but the stakes for him are now enormous. He could face up to 30 years in prison. So who is Scooter Libby? Here's CNN's Gary Tuchman.
Just as George W. Bush relies on Dick Cheney has relied on Scooter Libby.
Scooter Libby, in my view, is the second most powerful staff member in the White House, second only to Karl Rove.
You may not have heard of Libby until the midst of this scandal, but he's been at the center of power in the Bush White House. Libby, who's on crutches because of an injured foot, was educated at Yale and has been in and out of government for decades. He's a lawyer, and ironically, considering what he's going through, was quite skilled at getting people out of legal trouble. Libby and the vice president got acquainted when Cheney was the defense secretary under the first President Bush. By 2000, Libby was one of Cheney's top advisors and followed him to the White House. Libby was with Cheney on September 11, 2001, and in the days after, when the vice president was moved into secure locations in response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Libby has a well-established reputation as an administration hawk.
Scooter Libby is a formidable figure in this administration who's been involved in virtually every critical national security decision, including the war in Iraq.
Libby prepared a document that argued the case for going to war against Iraq, a document that reportedly became the basis for Secretary of State Colin Powell's presentation to the United Nations. But there's a very different side to Libby. He authored a novel called The Apprentice, a story of romance and intrigue set in 1903 Japan. It was a book that won praise from literary critics. Libby told a New York Times interviewer when the paperback came out that he occasionally dreams, quote, of just becoming a novelist and sitting on Crete and drinking odd-named wines. He's got a lot more on his mind now. Gary Tuchman, CNN, New York.
Coming up tonight, a look at the man who was not indicted today, Karl Rove. Was it just a temporary reprieve, or is he off the hook? Also, this is going to sting a little. We'll tell you about some flu shots that weren't. We'll also take a break first. From New York, this is NewsNight.
Technology has made your morning easier. Why not your shave? The new Philips Norelco Smart Touch XL is designed to shave more with every touch, with 3 shaving rings in each shaving head. And because now it pivots to stay on your face and neck, even tricky hairs are cut. Make every stroke count. Philips Norelco.
Saab was founded by 16 aircraft engineers. Their spirit lives on. The Saab 9-3 Aero convertible with an all-new 250 horsepower turbocharged V6. When you used to build jets, you don't build just another car. Saab, born from jets.
Hi, Smith from Archives. We've got a little problem that I think you as the head of HR need to know about. It's called Johnson, and it needs to go bye-bye. This gentleman refuses to leave. He's a troublemaker that needs to be...
Kellogg's Toasted Honey Crunch. So crunchy, so honey, so clustery, so good.
You're in on it, aren't you?
Kellogg's Toasted Honey Crunch. Sounds good.
Hey, isn't Jacobson choking?
I'd definitely say Jacobson's choking.
I know exactly what to do. I've seen it in the movies. It's called the Heimlich maneuver. You make a ball, stand behind the guy, and pull hard. The action on the solar plexus.
That's right, the solar plexus.
Expels the food. Just like I told you.
Less talk.
Just like in the movies.
Make it happen. The Royal Bank of Scotland Group.
Bring balance to your foods with Smart Balance Buttery Spread. The only spread with a patented balance of fats to help improve cholesterol. Smart Balance avoids trans fat naturally. Great butter taste and the right balance. Smart Balance.
Katrina. We were there when it hit, when it was over. We asked the tough questions and demanded answers. We're there now and will stay as the Gulf states rebuild. It's what you expect. It's why we're here. CNN.
Turn off the Ambilight function on your Philips flat TV, and it's like going back in time. The only flat TV with Ambilight from Philips. You'll never go back to ordinary TV.
Quick look now at some of the other stories making news tonight. We go to Atlanta and Erica Hill. Good evening again, Ms. Hill.
Good evening to you, Aaron, on this Friday. Unfortunately, I have to tell you about another storm. Tropical Storm Beta causing concern in the Western Caribbean tonight. It plowed into the tiny Caribbean island of Providencia today and has its sights set on Nicaragua. Forecasters say the storm could build hurricane strength at any moment. Now, a hurricane warning is in effect for the east coast of Nicaragua, and some coastal residents of coastal villages, that is, are being evacuated. Meantime, fake flu shots. The FBI says 1,000 Exxon Mobil workers in Texas were injected with fake flu vaccine. The owner of the health company hired to administer the shots has been arrested and officially charged with Medicare fraud. Investigators say he gave similar shots to 14 residents of a Texas senior citizen's home the next day. Preliminary tests indicate the syringes were filled with purified water. A nurse who helped give the shots blew the whistle. So far, no ill effects have been reported. And a record number of births to unmarried women, 1.5 million last year. That's according to a new federal study. More than 80%, we should point out, 80% of teen mothers are unmarried, but actually the number of teen mothers is falling. The biggest increase came among women in their 20s because many of them are unmarried but living with their partners, so of course still count as unwed mothers. And Second City no more. Thousands turned out in Chicago today to celebrate the White Sox victory in the World Series. This is the team's first World Championship since 1917, so plenty to celebrate. Many fans say they still can't believe it. Some people in Boston probably still can't believe it from last year. And Aaron, I think I checked the correct paper online. I think.
Yeah.
And I believe that the weather today called for a celebration.
It did indeed, and there was one. And if you go back and look at the tape from, I don't know, last February or March, you'll see that I actually predicted the White Sox would win the World Series.
I hope you had some money riding on it, my friend.
I think I predicted that. I might not.
We'll find the tape.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you. On we go. The grand jury that indicted Scooter Libby today had nothing to say about Karl Rove. Does that mean the president's top political advisor is off the hook? Our chief national correspondent, John King, reports.
The day's first clue came in Karl Rove's driveway.
I'm going to have a great Friday and a fantastic weekend. Hope you do too.
The Bush White House is in turmoil, but the president's right-hand man is still on the job, though not out of legal jeopardy.
We either charge someone or we don't talk about them.
The prosecutor won't name names, but Rove remains under investigation. His attorney voicing confidence when the special counsel finishes his work, he will conclude that Mr. Rove has done nothing wrong. At issue is Rove's initial failure to disclose to leak investigators a conversation with reporter Matthew Cooper about CIA operative Valerie Plame. Rove contends it was an inadvertent oversight and that he brought it to the prosecutor's attention as soon as he found an email reminding him. Rove friend and former top White House aide Nick Callio says those who don't accept Rove's explanation don't understand the pressure of 18-hour-a-day White House jobs.
There are a lot of things that I don't remember. I go through notes sometimes now and say, I don't even remember being in the meeting, let alone, having said what I said.
Rove has from the beginning insisted he broke no laws.
I didn't know her name and didn't leak her name.
What is no longer in dispute, though, is that Rove took part in a hardball White House political campaign to discredit Plame's husband, Ambassador Joe Wilson, when Wilson accused the White House of hyping the case for war in Iraq.
I think, hardball comes with politics, but hardball doesn't mean being unfair and it doesn't mean doing anything illegal.
Some Democrats are more than skeptical and note the investigation isn't over.
It's going to be interesting over the course of the next few weeks and the next few months to find out exactly what Karl Rove did know.
But for now, Rove is on the job and deeply involved in everything, including the urgent new search for a Supreme Court nominee.
Well, Karl, as everybody knows, is an excellent advisor to the president and has interests and a docket that is extremely broad.
That portfolio in the past few weeks has included managing his own campaign to avoid indictment and quietly orchestrating a strategy to get his version of events out of the grand jury room and into the public domain.
Now, Karl Rove is not named in the indictment of Scooter Libby by name, but we do know from two sources familiar with the investigation tonight that Karl Rove is indeed the mysterious Official A named in this indictment. Official A, the prosecutor says, is a senior administration official who told Scooter Libby before Bob Novak published the column that started all of this, that Novak was about to write that column. That official A, again, we are told, is indeed Karl Rove. Prosecutors using that to debunk Scooter Libby's argument that he first learned about this from reporters. But Aaron, tonight, sources close to Rove insist they just have a few more questions to answer. They believe the prosecutor will shut down this investigation within a matter of weeks with no charges, but the investigation is still ongoing. Rove's closest friends telling him, be very careful.
Does the fact that we can now say that official A is Karl Rove mean he is in any more legal jeopardy, any less legal jeopardy, or have we just put a little more frosting on a cake?
It's a little more frosting on a cake. It's essentially cracking one of the mysteries of the indictment. Prosecutor Fitzgerald said today, if you can't charge them, we don't name them as in this indictment. So from the Rove perspective, they're saying this is proof he did nothing wrong. Others say, don't rush to that judgment so quickly. The investigation is still open.
John, thank you very much. John King in Washington tonight. Coming up, Back to the Future, from what did the president know to swapping arms for hostages to I did not have sex with that woman, Ms. Lewinsky. Thumbnails of scandals of our lives, because this is Newsnight.
I didn't know her name and didn't leak her name. This is at the Justice Department. I'm confident that the U.S. Attorney, the prosecutor who's involved in looking at this, is going to do a very thorough job of doing a very substantial and conclusive investigation.
Sons. The all-new 306 horsepower IS from Lexus.
In 1932, during the darkest days of the Great Depression, the first Stanford company was established. Although times were difficult, Lotus Stanford found success through the simple philosophy of hard work, clear vision, and value for the client. Today, 73 years later, the Stanford Financial Group of companies still adhere to these principles. We build to last. Call us at 1-888-9-STANFORD or visit stanfordfinancial.com.
This house is definitely too large.
But it looks so perfect online.
Finding a new home shouldn't be this hard. An experienced RE/MAX agent can help find the home that's right for you. Nobody sells more real estate than RE/MAX.
Your challenge, get the right forces there as fast as you can.
Tail emerging from concealment.
Transmit alarm ready. Achieve air dominance. Engage the right targets with pinpoint precision. Force application. Precision engagement. Decisions made possible by net-centric systems, turning data into knowledge and knowledge into action.
Target destroyed.
Lockheed Martin. Transmit all clear. We never forget who we're working for.
CNN Tomorrow. Fashion icon Carolina Herrera on designing for Jackie O. Jack Klugman shares emotional memories of his 50-year friendship with Tony Randall, plus music legend Carlos Santana and more. Larry King Live. CNN Tomorrow, 9 Eastern.
American Morning. What happened overnight and what's happening in the day ahead. Real news makes the difference. Soledad O'Brien and Miles O'Brien. American Morning. CNN Monday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern.
Think about this for a moment. If you are of a certain age, there is a good chance that once upon a time you were taught to and did trust your government. Indeed, we'd like to think that none of us has become so jaded that we never trust our government, but we have been tested in that regard because sometimes our elected officials lie, cheat, steal, or shall we say kiss inappropriately. Today's scandal is just another in a line.
A few hours ago, a federal grand jury sitting in the District of Columbia returned a 5-count indictment against I. Lewis Libby.
Special Prosecutor Patrick J. Fitzgerald today saying words no administration wants to hear, that one of its own has been indicted. No administration wants to hear it, but more than a few have. Some are about sex, others about money, power, or just plain politics. In 1921, it was Teapot Dome, named for a Wyoming town that was home to U.S. oil reserves. Back then, James B. Fall, the Secretary of the Interior under President Harding, was indicted for accepting bribes from 2 oil operators. In return, he leased them oil reserves, oil reserved for the Navy. Fall spent a year in prison, paid a $100,000 fine.
I'm not a crook.
Fast forward to 1972, Nixon was president, Watergate, the scandal. It started with what the president's press secretary called a third-rate burglary. 5 men arrested for breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate. You know the rest. Washington Post reporters Woodward and Bernstein kept digging around, uncovered a series of crimes and cover-ups that reached all the way to the White House. In the end, the burglars and 2 former White House employees, E. Howard Hunt and G. Gordon Liddy, were convicted of conspiracy, burglary, and wiretapping. 3 former White House aides were convicted of hindering the investigation. The president himself was named as a co-conspirator, and on August the 9th, 1974, Richard Nixon resigned just ahead of an impeachment trial.
I told the American people I did not trade arms for hostages.
In the mid-'80s, there was Iran-Contra, the Reagan administration selling arms, anti-tank missiles to be precise, to Iran, in hopes of winning the release for Americans held hostage by Iranian-backed terrorists. Money from the sale was used to fund the Sandinista rebels in Nicaragua, and both actions contradicted U.S. policy. There were congressional hearings, indictments against National Security Advisor John Poindexter and one of his aides, Colonel Oliver North. Neither ended up in prison.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
And then the mid-'90s, there was Monica. President Bill Clinton denied an affair with White House intern Monica Lewinsky, denied it to a national TV audience, and unfortunately for him, denied it under oath. He was charged with perjury and obstruction, and he was impeached. People can debate how big a deal today's indictment is, but consider this. Not since 1875, President Ulysses Grant has a sitting White House official been indicted. You don't remember Oliver Babcock, of course, but he shares company tonight with Lewis Scooter Libby. So what's it like to work at a White House in the scandal crisis mode? David Gergen has advised both Republican and Democratic presidents, as we seem to say all the time. John Podesta advised Bill Clinton, and Jeff Greenfield often advises me, but that's not why he's here tonight. Gentlemen, let me begin by rolling a piece of tape, or having the control room roll one. This is the president this afternoon. Kind of look at his face. I'm not sure we've seen him look quite like this or had a day quite like this. John, what would you guess the president was going through today?
Today I accepted the resignation.
Well, this was a tough day, Aaron, I think, for the president, but he looked like he intended to just tough it out. He didn't look like a guy who intended to change course, to clean house. I think he looked like he was just going to kind of hunker down and try to tough things out at this point.
And David, the importance of looking like you're going to tough it out to a president, which they all honestly try and do. They want to get back to the people's business, they always tell us, is what?
Well, let me just say, first of all, I knew Oliver Babcock. I worked with Oliver Babcock, and Scooter Libby is no Oliver Babcock.
Thank you, David.
Okay. I think on a day like this, with the importance of the president coming out and toughening out is exactly what John Podesta said, and that is he does not look like he's being very introspective, that he's really taking it aboard. In fact, I think there's a certain defiance in this White House. They don't think they've done much wrong. They don't think they made a mistake on Harriet Miers, as far as I can tell. They think she was done in by politics. They don't really think they made much of a mistake here. And so what that suggests is you're not going to see much course correction, which I think is quite necessary, in fact, for them to recover.
Let me come back to that, but let me draw Jeff in. One of the things I've heard a lot today is they've lost control of the agenda. Do you think that the president has lost control of the agenda?
We're going to find out if he tries to restart his domestic agenda. And I think the one break that they have is that this is an odd-numbered year. Imagine this happening in late October of 04 or next year, late October of 06, as people prepare to vote. You know, I actually do think that we live in a time, partly because of us, that people process this stuff so quickly that it's entirely possible that by next spring he'll be rolling out something. The question is, with everybody telling him he's got to change course, you know, crisis has 1,000 kibitzers. Is he of a mind to do that, or as John and David describe, are they saying, you know what, we got here, we got reelected, we got most of our agenda passed in the first years, just give us a little time, we got our conservative base back because we lanced the Harriet Miers problem. So I'm not so sure they've lost control.
John, people have said a lot. The president, one way to get the agenda back, if in fact he's lost it, is that you launch big, bold ideas. He launched a big, bold idea in Social Security, probably the biggest, boldest idea in American politics, in a sense, given how many people it affects, and it fell flat. So what are the big, bold domestic ideas in a country that seems to have growing doubts over the president himself?
Well, look, Social Security completely crashed and burned. And, you know, when he says, I want to get back and do my job, I want to get back and do the work of the people, it reminds me of what President Clinton said. But it's important to remember, when President Clinton was saying that, he had a 65% job approval. Right now, George Bush has a 38% job approval. So when people hear that he's going to just go back and do the same thing, I think they say to themselves, oh, no, you know, what is he talking about? I think that, you know, he hasn't done much about energy. He hasn't done anything to really deal with the middle-class squeeze in this country. He's got a real problem in Iraq. So he's got his hands full. And, you know, I think at this point he's got a team that, if nothing else, has their credibility in shreds. You know, the one thing we know that's unassailable is that Karl Rove went out, told Scott McClellan to say he had nothing to do with it. We know that was not true. And, you know, I think he'd be well advised to clean house, but I don't think he's going to do it.
David, on the whole house cleaning thing, I mean, to me, it almost cuts two ways. I gather there's some advantage in bringing new blood in, and people are tired. It's exhausting work. On the other hand, it feels, or it can play as desperate.
It can, but in this case, I think the country would welcome someone like Fred Thompson, the former senator, coming in, someone of stature, of the kind of person that Howard Baker came in with Ronald Reagan. But here, on the substantive side, Aaron, I think he's got this problem that you know, when Reagan was there and he was looking for new initiatives after Iran-Contra, he had Gorbachev as a partner, and they went engaged in summits, and they got an arms control treaty, and that really helped as the part of the substantive recovery. With George W. Bush, you know, the next big decision he's got to make is on the Supreme Court, and every indication is that he is going to choose a fight, that he's going to go to someone who's you know, who's a strong conservative, who may well alienate and arouse the center and the left in the Congress, and he'll have a huge fight on his hands. If he were to do that, if he can't find a sort of a John Roberts Jr., maybe McConnell would be that kind of, Michael McConnell of Denver would be that kind of candidate. If he can't find that kind of person and he gets a fight, then I think his capacity to reach out and heal and build bridges is really going to be destroyed for a long time to come.
Jeff, let me give you the last word here. Is this a moment, I don't think the president will call you and ask you for advice, but if he's watching tonight, is this a moment to fight or switch, as the old ad went?
It may be a moment, if I may quote Patrick Fitzgerald, to take a deep breath. Because there is one great advantage that George W. Bush has, which is the other party. One pretty influential Republican said to me this week, you know, the wheels are coming off, we're in trouble. He says, if the Democrats weren't brain dead, we'd really be in trouble.
Yeah. So, Jeff, it's good to see you. David and John, thank you for your time tonight. Appreciate it very much. Coming up, Karl Rove, he's off the hook, at least for now. Is he out of the woods? Our legal analyst, Jeffrey Tubman, joins us to talk about that and some of the other unknowns in all of this, things we'd like to know. We'll take a break first from New York and around the world. This is NewsNight.
85 days in jail because of my belief in the importance of upholding the confidential relationship journalists have with their sources.
Hey guys, y'all set? Y'all buckled in here? Bye-bye, Eddie.
So how was the first day?
You know, I think my dad was wrong. Maybe I do have a future as a ski bum.
Retirement isn't an end. It's the start of what you were meant for all along. So grab your skis and say, hello, future. Call your advisor about the powerful resources of Lincoln Financial Group.
Okay, so remember your old kitchen?
Yeah.
Well, get ready for an improvement. Look! Oh my gosh! Oh my god!
They work miracles.
3 new Total cereals. Oh my gosh! New Total with strawberries. Oh my god! New Total vanilla yogurt. And new Total honey clusters.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. It's a whole new start.
Who would ever think that the waste we generate would generate support for local events? The same people who lead the way in recycling nationwide and who conduct educational programs for our children. We're Waste Management. Working with local leaders, we're developing smart, earth-friendly landfill properties that serve the community in unexpected ways. From everyday collection to environmental protection. Think green. Think Waste Management.
For about a quarter a day, just $7.95 a month per unit, Colonial Penn offers guaranteed acceptance life insurance to people ages 50 to 85. These days, funeral costs alone average over $6,000. Now you can get help with no medical exam, no health questions. And the rate of $7.95 a month per unit is guaranteed never to increase.
Call 1-800-529-5402 to receive free information in the mail. Call now.
This is Take On Orbits. Today's contestants need a hotel in Hawaii for under $100 with a golf course. Ready? Go.
Hotel reservations.
Yes. Done. Orbits, it's that easy.
WMD, a major argument for war in Iraq. Now insiders open up. Don't miss the critically acclaimed CNN presents Dead Wrong. Inside an intelligence meltdown. CNN coming up next.
Any notion that anyone might have that there's a different standard for a high official, that this is somehow singling out obstruction of justice of perjury, is upside down. If these facts are true, if we were to walk away from this and not charge obstruction of justice as perjury, we might as well just hand in our jobs.
And that's Scooter Libby arriving at his home. His pictures just in, being driven to his home in McLean, Virginia, on what is, as he put it, a very sad day for him and his family. He issued a statement saying he expects to be exonerated, but he's no doubt got a long and difficult year ahead. His name was James McCord Jr., and for those of you who are Watergate history buffs, old enough to remember, he was the Watergate burglar who first broke. Facing a long prison term and a tough-as-nails judge, Mr. McCord spilled the beans, as they say in the B-movies, but will Scooter Libby. Are there even more beans to spill? Here to take us through some of the knowns and unknowns in the indictment today and the investigation, our senior legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin. Do you think that they'll try and deal with Mr. Libby, or is he a high enough fish, or a high enough some animal?
No, I think this case will go to trial. I think if there was a plea bargain to be made, it would have been made before indictment. He would have come in and plea. I think the time for dealing was before. I think this case is going to trial.
I was in a conversation you may or may not have heard with John Sununu, the senator, earlier, and I said, yeah, I'd really like to hear from the vice president. There's a few questions of the vice president. Are there questions you wouldn't mind asking the vice president of the United States about his relationship to this and his right-hand man?
Oh, it's astonishing. I mean, you know, President Bush answers questions all the time. I mean, Vice President Cheney lives in a bubble like no public official I have ever seen. Here he is involved in a very serious criminal case. He has never answered questions on this subject. He barely ever appears in public except reading speeches. But you know, he's been vice president for 5 years, and he's been.
Someone accused you of a Freudian slip there.
It could.
What would you ask him if you could ask him one good one?
Describe your role in the. When did you know about Victoria, Valerie Wilson, Valerie Plame Wilson's identity, and describe all your conversations with Scooter Libby about that?
We think we sort of know that he calls George Tenet and gets this information, and I forget the date. But I think the thing I want to know is, did you say, let's go out and trash the guy? I mean, you probably say it more elegantly, but something like that.
And that's what is important about his role. The actions described in the indictment are not improper or illegal, and it sort of makes a certain amount of sense. He says this guy Wilson surfaces in the press.
Yeah.
He calls the CIA, says, "Who is this guy? What's the story?" And then he tells his chief of staff about him. The question, though, is what did he tell him to do about it, and what does Scooter Libby think about that?
I almost want to apologize for this question because I don't think it's knowable, but I'm asking anyways because I want it on the table. Here you got a guy, Mr. Libby, who is a lawyer, I think Yale-educated lawyer.
Yes, indeed.
Very smart.
Columbia Law School.
Okay. Very smart guy in any case. He's got to know that there are notes in these conversations, there are records of meetings. Why do you go in front of the grand jury and lie?
It is unbelievable, isn't it? But in white-collar cases, that is almost always the defense, which is...
What, I wouldn't be that stupid?
Yeah, he couldn't be that stupid. It was the defense in the Martha Stewart case. How could she be so stupid, this intelligent woman? You know what? People do stupid things all the time. And that's usually the prosecutor's response, and a lot of people get convicted. They hope they don't get caught.
Thank you. You've had a long day.
It's been a long day.
I know it has. Thank you very much. Coming up, from failed intelligence to indictments and the war in Iraq, how they all may tie together to lead us to this day and this program, which is NewsNight.
Finding a great place to retire isn't always easy. Faced with so many choices, more and more seniors are now choosing to go back to school, discovering that life in a college town is one of the best places to retire. A special series all this week on CNN. Learn more about the communities profiled in the series at money.com/retire and in the November issue of Money Magazine. Sponsored by the Principal Financial Group. We'll give you an edge.
CNN Saturday. CNN's Dan Lothian investigates a crisis in the classroom. Trust CNN to take a hard look at the gap. CNN Saturday, 8 Eastern.
A lesson for parents about the power of your cable remote. Yes, you can surf the channels with it. But did you know? The cable remote can help control what your children watch. It's pretty easy. First hit Menu or Settings, then scroll through the on-screen options to set your password. Finally, block the programming by channel or rating. And talk to your children about why certain programs are not for them. Set your parental controls. It's easy. For more details on parental controls and tools, go to controlyourtv.org.
Promise. It's a passionate commitment to saving lives. At the nationally recognized St. Thomas Heart Institute, that passion drives every promise we make. Through our new state-of-the-art chest pain center, we'll deliver the most rapid diagnosis and treatment that Tennessee has to offer. Giving you the very best chance to survive a heart attack is part of our promise.
And we honor it every time you put your heart into our hands.
In the kitchens at Bosco's, chefs are working with carefully selected ingredients to assure that every entree is perfectly prepared. The result is a daily celebration of uncompromising taste, to be savored and remembered every time. You are invited to join the celebration. You will rejoice that you did. Bosco's, the restaurant for beer lovers.
7 different vehicles. Until Monday only, there's only one place to be. Your Middle Tennessee Toyota dealers will give you an extra $1,000 off your favorite new trucks and SUVs. Get $1,000 off your best deal on a new 05 or 06 Tacoma, Tundra, Highlander, 4Runner, or Sequoia, or any remaining new 05 RAV4 or Sienna. That's $1,000 over and above all other factory incentives. Only until Monday. Only one place. Your Middle Tennessee Toyota dealers. Toyota. Moving forward.
Carolina Herrera on Designing for Jackie O and Jack Klugman on Tony Randall. Larry King, 9 Eastern.
We learned today that a Marine from Ohio was killed in Iraq on Thursday. Lance Corporal Robert Eckfield Jr. was 23 years old. As the war continues, so of course do the questions. Today, the special counsel, Patrick Fitzgerald, was asked if the indictment was a vindication that the Bush administration took the country to war on a false premise. This is how he answered.
This indictment is not about the war. This indictment is not about the propriety of the war. And people who believe fervently in the war effort, people who oppose it, people who have mixed feelings about it, should not look to this indictment for any resolution of how they feel or any vindication of how they feel.
I think there was a more interesting person today, by the way, than Mr. Fitzgerald. Democrats disagree with him. They believe the indictment has everything to do with the war, how we got to war. Partisan, yes, but it is part of the national debate. Our national security correspondent, David Ensor, has been doing an incredible amount of work and good work on the intelligence that led up to the war and how it came to be, and David joins us now. David, I think that people's perspective on this is, people who are opposed to the war say that it wasn't just that the intelligence was wrong, it's that the intelligence was cooked. Yeah. Do we know? Can we answer that for them?
Cooked is probably a little too strong a word. People in the intelligence community, and let's be honest, I also thought that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. They had used them on their own. Saddam had used them on his own people. He'd used them against Iran. There were chemical weapons that were unaccounted for after the war. So there was lots of good logical reason to think there were weapons of mass destruction there. The amazing thing is there were not. And, I've tried to find out how this could go so badly wrong, which is part of what I guess we're going to be showing people in the next hour, this look at how this could go so badly wrong. But I was also today at that press conference that you just mentioned, Mr. Fitzgerald's press conference, and what was so striking there was there were lots of questions about, well, isn't this really about Iraq? Mm-hmm. Isn't this really about the WMD? And he, of course, it's in his interest to be as narrow as possible, to say, no, it's just about lying. That's all it's about. I don't want to go there. Well, but for most of the people in the country, whether they're for or against the war, that's what this is really about in political terms.
Right. At some level, this is about Joe Wilson saying, I'm not saying he's right about this, I'm just saying what he said is that they took the country to war when they knew the evidence was at least ambiguous, and they never framed it in an ambiguous way.
Right, but they did believe there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and as I say, a lot of people did, myself included. Now, that turned out to be wrong, and that may not have been the real main motivation for going to Iraq in the first place, which is yet another question.
David, as you mentioned, we'll take a deeper look at this in the hour ahead. We appreciate your spending a few minutes with us in anticipation of that to sort of set the stage. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
David Ensor tonight. We'll take a break and we'll continue in a moment.
Disciplined investing. It's not about following the crowd. At T. Rowe Price, our independent research means we're not deceived by every market ripple, and we don't chase every fad. For each 1, 5, and 10-year period, over 65% of our funds beat their Lipper average. Low-cost mutual funds from T. Rowe Price. Invest with confidence. Request a complete prospectus or profile with investment objectives, risks, fees, expenses, and other information to read and consider carefully before investing.
My parents retired on just their pension. For me, I know even 401ks and IRAs won't be enough.
Stocks and bonds alone aren't enough anymore.
My dad put 4 of us through college by investing. Even with just 2 kids, we're planning beyond stocks and bonds.
At Merrill Lynch, we'll help all your money work harder by working together. cash, investments, mortgages, retirement. That's Total Merrill.
What tobacco issues are important to you?
The health effects. That's what I'm concerned about.
The fact is, there is no safe cigarette. Lights and ultralights are no exception. And to reduce the health effects of smoking, the best thing to do is to quit. At philipmorrisusa.com, you can find information from public health authorities on the dangers of smoking and links to help smokers who've decided to quit. Find out more. Visit philipmorrisusa.com.
CNN Sunday, indictments in the CIA leak probe. A Supreme Court nominee steps down. How will the Bush administration recover? Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid and Judiciary Committee Chairman Arlen Specter. Join Wolf in Late Edition, CNN Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern.
Closed captioning provided by Head On PM, a new pain reliever sleep aid applied directly to the forehead.
Head On, introducing a new headache treatment applied directly to the forehead. How fast do you want relief from your headaches and migraines? Head On. It's safe and it really works. In stores now.
Well, good evening again. In a moment, CNN presents Dead Wrong. First, here's what's making news at this moment. Vice President Cheney's chief of staff, right-hand man, Scooter Libby, has resigned after being indicted today on charges of lying and obstructing justice. Mr. Libby says he is confident he'll be exonerated. President Bush praised Libby's government service and noted, as we all should, that Libby is considered innocent until proven guilty. The vice president accepted Mr. Libby's resignation with regret. The grand jury that indicted Libby has been trying to determine who leaked the identity of CIA operative Valerie Plame. Ms. Plame's husband, former U.S. Ambassador Joe Wilson, says the case involves charges that, quote, go to the very heart of our democracy. We look at the questions of how we ended up in Iraq in the CNN Presents Dead Wrong, which is now.